Welcome to Pour Decisions of GTM, where we share sips, slips, and tips in an unfiltered discussion that helps GTM leaders move from mediocre to top shelf quality. Join us as we spill our tea on lessons learned, on what not to do, and what we can do to yield better results going forward. I am your host, Elizabeth Italiano, and I am really excited to be joined by Bridget Harris, the CEO of You Can Book Me. And I'll quote from her LinkedIn because I love this tagline. It might be one of my favorites that I've seen on LinkedIn. Bridget is building the best badass booking tool that will work for your business and not the other way around. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Bridget so you can tell us a little bit more about yourself. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Yes, that is very true. That's exactly what we are doing. We're building the best badass booking tool for businesses. We're really focused on customers who are using their booking tool, scheduling tool, to drive value for their business. So they're taking appointments with their customers all day, every day, and they really need a tool to work for them. And we've been in that business for over 12 years. So we were one of the very first calendar-based scheduling tools, and we kind of took off like a rocket in a slightly uncontrolled way, I have to say, at the beginning. But we kind of rode a wave of freemium, the freemium business model that felt very obvious to us at the time because we were and have remained bootstrapped founders. So because we never looked for any outside investment, we grew so fast at the beginning, it allowed us to build up sufficient revenue to keep going in the company and get to profitability, which we did about 5 years later. So the scheduling tool now is one of the top 3 scheduling tools in the world. We're used by millions of people every month. And it's been an absolute rocket ride to get to where we are. We're obviously not as big as some of the biggest scheduling tools that you probably would have heard of. But for us, we want to be the best for a certain group of people that we know totally benefit from our solution. So that's us, really. That's us in a nutshell.
Okay. There's a few things that I definitely want to dig into while we chat today. You mentioned just now that you're focused on a certain group of customers that you work with really well. And that's one of the things that I love about what you're putting out on LinkedIn and some of our previous discussions is that it's really clear that you understand your customer and you focus on customer feedback, which we'll get into a little bit as well. Because quite frankly, I think that is a huge gap in SaaS today. And why there's some pretty mediocre to awful experiences because people don't understand their customers. So I'm really excited to hear your perspective on that and to dig into that a little bit further. And I can also second the fact that it is badass having used You Can Book Me many times. It's a great platform. So you folks are obviously, you're doing a great job and congratulations on hitting that profitability mark.
Thank you very much. And I should have said we're at about $5 million ARR now. So we're a multi-million pound software company. And just to respond to that point, and it's not for me to really, pontificate about how everybody else does their job, but I would say that specifically inside B2B SaaS, the issue seems to be that a lot of B2B SaaS is selling to other B2B SaaS. And so you do have a structural problem there, which is essentially a bubble that's created by VC money, because majority of B2B SaaS, when it launches, only lasts for a couple of years before it burns out. They're like shooting stars in the sky. And identifying your customer has to go beyond what can you persuade somebody to come and use your tool for by spending a lot of money on sales and marketing, but ultimately won't make any profit or value out of doing. Knowing your customer is about what can I do to build a profitable business based on multiple customers that all look like each other, that I don't necessarily personally know every single one. But what I know is that they're all going to use this solution the same way and they're all going to have the same experience. And I can sell to more than one of them profitably. And I think that the B2B SaaS world struggles with knowing the difference between a problem that an actual customer has where it will find value and trying to sell to other B2B SaaS generally. So I think people say B2B SaaS is their ICP, but in fact, B2B SaaS is full of companies that themselves are not going to survive, that they don't really have real problems anyway in their solutions, or they're trying to sell to other B2B SaaS. It becomes a very sort of, Lord of the Flies kind of problem that they all start eating each other's market share. So knowing your customer, in fact, I know one of the questions is, what is the kind of B2B tips and trips, what trips, like knowing your customer for us has been a lifelong thing for us to do. We continually make mistakes about it, and then we continually come back and rebuild our knowledge around it, because ultimately a business has only two elements, which is the service or product you're providing and the person willing to pay for it. It is that one transactional relationship that exists, and you can't fake it. You can't fake, a product or a service that has no customers, or customers who want something, value or a product that you're not willing to offer, or they're not willing to pay enough for, or they're going to go somewhere else. And it's I think that there's enough of the market for everybody to build a decent business, but I think that you have to spend that time at the beginning truly understanding who is going to get value out of your tool.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you see, like you said, a lot of B2B SaaS has B2B SaaS clients. And I think there was a lot of businesses in the growth at all cost ZERP era that survived that wouldn't have survived nearly as long as they did if it wasn't for those conditions. And so you ended up having this, ripple effect that we saw where, people were downgrading because there was a lot of user-based licenses. And I think one of the root causes was it was solving, a minor pain, not a big problem that was tied to a priority. So I think that had a big impact too.
Yeah, I mean, going back to You Can Book Me, the customers that we know are most successful using You Can Book Me literally tell me that they couldn't live without it. I interview our customers and we record it for our showcase series. And they say to me on camera live, do not take this away from me. I cannot run my business without You Can Book Me. So it's a bit like, okay, we've got these people for life then. And that's a wonderful feeling, because obviously it means that the business is resilient and we can keep going. But on the other hand, it also just illustrates, as you said, any business has to offer a compelling value. Otherwise, especially in an economic circumstance where it's a bit more constrained, they're not going to pay for a nice to have or a luxury, or if your control over your budget has got constraints, you're only going to pay for something that is compelling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I tell my clients all the time, I'm like, you want to get to the point where you understand your client's business so well, and that you've built a product that solves a big problem, where that if you were ripped out, they would say, my God, I cannot do my job. This is like a non-starter. I absolutely need this. Otherwise, you're a churn risk. If you're like, well, there's a workaround, or, it's not that big of a pain, then all right, then flag that as a churn risk. So I think, along the way, I'm sure you've learned a lot and seen some go-to-market mistakes. And so, the premise today is that we're going to be sharing some of those slips and tips over a drink together. And we like to do a little bit of an icebreaker starting up. So before we get into some of the other questions around go-to-market mistakes, I'd love to hear, what are you sipping on today as we spill our tea with our audience?
Well, given I'm British, I would love to say tea, but I had my tea this morning. So now I'm drinking water, because it's still the middle of the day for me and I'm still working away. So I'm not doing anything other than cold water, literally from a water cooler, because today I'm in the office.
Well, hydration is important. And I'm representing the tea.
Great. With Scottish bagpipes. Love it. I love it.
Yes. And so this was actually inspired. I mean, I love tea, and I love my some of my roots are Scottish roots. And I grew up Highland dancing, taking Gaelic lessons, playing the fiddle. And I saw
play the
that
fiddle.
you posted on LinkedIn.
I play the fiddle. Yay!
Yeah, a number of months back, you posted that you played the fiddle, and I was like, I'm going to remember that. So yes, I felt like I was like, okay, I'm going to bring tea.
Love it.
And put it in my favorite Scottish teacup. So literally, hopefully I won't literally spill tea, but.
Elizabeth, when we're not doing a go-to-market podcast, we obviously need to have a conversation about Scottish country music, because it says we have a lot in common.
Yes, we do. Oh my gosh. I could probably talk about that for hours, but yes, we'll focus on go-to-market, but yes, we'll definitely have a conversation about that.
Are you in Nova Scotia? Is that your background? Does that make sense?
That's where I grew up.
Right,
I grew up in Nova Scotia, and my family's still there.
There's a huge tradition,
so.
huge tradition of fantastic music. What I love is that Nova Scotia has got its own repertoire of music now, which Scottish and Irish players learn tunes from that repertoire, which have obviously gone over to Canada and then evolved, and then new musicians have written new tunes. And I mean, it's a wonderful area. I've never been. I'd love to go and do some some Canadian Scottish tunes.
Yeah, it's a fun place. It's beautiful, it's gorgeous. The music, the food is wonderful. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of the Celtic Colors International
I
Festival.
have,
It's in
yes.
October.
Yeah.
Okay, that's one of my favorite things to do. I'm not unfortunately going to get there this year, but yes, for anybody listening that's interested in Celtic arts, the Celtic Colors Festival is so much fun. Great music, lots of partying if you're into that. But yes, we'll just certainly talk about that over another cup of tea at another time. So, would love to hear from you what one of the biggest mistakes is that you've made or that you've experienced during your time in go-to-market.
Well, I think that it's a slightly boring answer because we've already talked about it. But I think that the biggest mistake we made at the very beginning was that we built too much product for too many different kinds of customers. And I think this is a common mistake, particularly for bootstrap founders, particularly for first-time entrepreneurs, that even though we did go through the classic case of an MVP and then product market fit, and we did a lot of customer feedback, user testing type things at the beginning. So we did do that. We built a huge amount of product before we had truly understood our model. So in some ways it was a pre-go-to-market mistake, which is that we struggled to go to market when we had quite a horizontal group of people using the tool with features that matched everything that they wanted and complexity that we couldn't really support in a business model that was freemium to begin with. So all of the, I would say, major pivots or strategic changes that we have done over the years, which I think is completely normal for a 12-year-old software company, we're not the only people who've done this, is where we've had to reposition or course correct. It's been because we have understood that product market fit isn't like a permanent thing. It's not like saying I buy this thing for me as an asset and it will forevermore be one of our assets, product market fit. You go in and out of product market fit. You have to get into the first version of product market fit to build your product and sell it to your first 100 customers. And you can keep going. And if you're not careful, you end up with 1,000 customers, none of whom have anything in common, in which case you have to course correct back to the group of customers you do have something in common with. And we have made that mistake multiple times. So it's not like something that, it's like, oh, stupid me, and I forgot to press send. This is a major part of running a successful business, is to be continually course correcting for your product market fit, for your ICP, and for your positioning in the market. And so that has resulted in 3 times we've changed the pricing model. So we had the first version of our pricing, then we produced a second version where we had to chop and change what we were putting into that pricing. Then we changed the pricing model altogether to basically charge for a different kind of use case and usage. And then this summer we've changed the pricing again back to actually something that was similar to what we had 8 years ago. And I take that as partly a go-to-market strategy, because for us, we are self-service. So we grow through people adopting the tool, like you did, just finding the website, creating an account, and off you go. And you shouldn't really need, other than a bit of support occasionally, but you don't need a sales cycle to help you decide whether you're going to give us any money. And then, of course, even if you did give us money, there wouldn't be that. It's not a huge amount. So it has to be self-service in terms of its business model. And we had a pricing strategy that wasn't helping our go-to-market business strategy, because our go-to-market business strategy is self-service, organic viral loop, organic search. They need a pricing model that they can just go into and adopt a price category that works for them. And we had the wrong kind of pricing. So that's, you could say that's a real error. On the other hand, I always think with these sort of mistakes, something is working until it doesn't. So when we changed pricing, it worked. It was brilliant for quite a few years. And then it stopped working. And then you're like, oh, that stopped working. We have to change that now. Does that answer your question? I don't know. Like go-to-market, like for me, it's a very different experience of go-to-market for us because of the history of the way we've grown our tool. But I think that the lessons are pretty universal.
Right. And so to go back to something you mentioned around horizontal versus vertical, and I think
Yes.
this ties in a little bit to what you said when we first started our discussion too around, people kind of chasing everyone in B2B SaaS and not saying, oh no, this is the area of B2B SaaS. How did you start to recognize like who your customers were and what vertical and start to hone in on that ICP? Was there kind of warning signs and churn or where you were winning? Like what sort of flagged that for you?
I think that is a very good signal that if people that who should be using the tool successfully are churning, because you have a group of people like them who do really well, then you want to find a reason to correct that. So that was the case with pricing. So we could see people were churning from us who should be using our tool, but we're just too expensive for them in that group, in that category. But we also have done a huge amount of modeling in the last 12 months. So we modeled who was using the tool, who was signing up, what sectors are they from, how are they using the tool, what features are they using, and how much are they paying us. And so that was a really, really significant piece of work. And that modeling resulted in us being able to validate our ICP using data, not just 6 cents. So, and it comes down to what we were just saying before, which is that the people who are most successful using You Can Book Me could not live without it. It forms a compelling part of their business stack. And they don't have to be just single entrepreneurs or digital, SMBs. They could be slightly larger companies, but they are organizations where they run on You Can Book Me. They're literally powered by You Can Book Me. And it's not just a nice to have, because I think that in the world of scheduling, there are plenty of free scheduling tools out there. So it's very hard now. I think 10 years ago, our go-to market was, look, we're a scheduling tool. You've never seen anything like this before, and we're free. Off you go. That was enough to we got 500,000 people on board to You Can Book Me in the first 5 years because of that. They're not all using You Can Book Me now, but as a free tool, people just signed up and they thought it was great. But now there's 200 free scheduling tools. It's just literally 10 a penny. So the supply of scheduling tools has now outpaced demand for a free scheduling tool. So you now need to go from what was that vertical adoption just because of novelty, because you're just new, into specifically why would people choose you? What's the differentiators? Why would you have a leading market present in this particular type of scheduling tool? And that's what we've had to go through with looking at our ICP. So we just looked at our customers across the board, and it's like sort of choosing your favorite puppies or children. Like, nobody wants to sit there and go, it's the hardest thing in the world is to say no. And I'm very bad at it, to say no, because I've said, yeah, this is our ICP, this is what we're focused on, and then somebody goes, look, here is a tractor company in Minnesota and they want to use You Can Book Me to book new sheep going into every field. And I'm like, yeah, I think we could probably do that. Like, it's just really, you can't resist, because anybody that's saying, can I use your tool? This is my use case. It's like a problem. And if you're a problem solver, it's addictive. It's like a Wordle puzzle. Just like every day you get a new thing to solve. So it's been a difficult thing for us to shift our mindset to say, no, we really have to focus on our ICPs that we know day in, day out rely on our tool. And we have to champion them, and we have to form a community around them, and we have to promote them, and we have to advocate for them as businesses, as what they are doing, so that You Can Book Me. And I've had some amazing conversations with customers recently where they talk about You Can Book Me as we are their partner in their business. They see us as a partner. And that's partly because of the feeling that they get when they use the tool, and obviously who we are as a company, but also that they rely on us like a team member. And that becomes, that's your anecdotal and your qualitative definition of your ICP. And then what we did was validate that in the data, and we can see that in the data, that those are the people that stay for the longest, use the tool the most consistently, and are the most successful using the tool.
I've been hearing a lot this year because it's easier now to build than it was, say, 10 years ago, and that it's getting more and more difficult to build a moat around your product, just from a product perspective. And so companies are looking at, okay, how do I, secure my ICP? Is it through community? Is it through self-serve, or, how we deliver on customer success, or any of those types of things? So when you look at the customers that you have that you're partnered with, what are the things that like they see as being, why you're a partner? Is it and any lessons that you've learned on maybe customers who have churned that you would have liked to have kept if you had have approached a little bit differently?
I think that, well, we'd always welcome people back. So again, a tool like You Can Book Me, people bounce in and out of the tool all the time. So you have this kind of churn, subscriber growth friction that happens. So the CEO of Typeform told me last year, and obviously Typeform is this huge survey building product. He said that you need to have a principle of do no harm. So whereas you are focused on your ICP and the product that you are offering them, even if you're saying no to building other features, you shouldn't be doing anything to try to stop other people from using your tool, because in a horizontal tool like Typeform where You Can Book Me, anybody can sign up. And so you don't want to be sitting there going, why have you signed up? We don't want you. We're not turning anybody down. However, we're saying this is a self-service process that you have to find your own way. And if you ask us for esoteric requests that don't really match the business group that we're going after, then we're going to say no. But we're not going to do anything to take something away from you just because you're a tractor farmer trying to use fields to book sheep. I mean, that doesn't exist, but something completely random. But to answer your question about the differentiation, you're absolutely right that building a moat it's harder than it sounds. So everybody is trying to build a community. Everybody is trying to have a voice that feels separate and different to their competitor. Yes, there are product differences between You Can Book Me and Calendly, for example. Like there are things that we do that they don't do, but equally there's things that they do that we don't do. And so you have to find a way through that maze where you understand that most people don't know as much detail of the thing that you're thinking about than you. So you can obsess over that feature that is really good that you built, but probably most purchasers have no idea that that's what your product does. So at the end of the day, brand and community and how you make people feel is going to be your entry point through to people deciding to use your tool. And it's not really actually about how well you can do it. It's actually about the timing of the person making the decision. So in today's strained go-to-market times, you want to optimize what you're doing. And I would say that the days of sales and marketing with multi-million-pound budgets, they're just saying, throw everything at the wall, get 200 sales reps to make 50 calls a day each, and you will find customers to buy this product. And it doesn't really matter. There is no money to fund that anymore because it's deeply unprofitable, because the valuation is going to come from the sale of the shares of that company, not the income that they can generate in the meantime. So there's no money to throw everything at the wall. So where somebody needs to position themselves is what position would a customer need to be in for the right timing and intention to buy my product? And if they are in the mood to buy my product, I need to make sure that my face is in front of them, because if that is the case, they will then find me and they'll buy me. And I think that is where a lot of these automation and AI tools are helping, because they're helping set expectations and the intent data essentially of activity at scale. So you can then say, I only want to talk to companies that are hiring SDRs because they're the only people that are going to be looking for my automation tool or whatever it is that I'm selling. So, and it's at this point, and I want to compare that data with looking at companies that aren't currently using a solution that I'm offering. And so that I can then correlate companies that are trying to solve the job that I can help with and are in a situation where they're not using an existing competitor. Those are the people I will throw everything at, because those are the people where the timing might be right to have a conversation. Now, with us, we don't do it exactly like that, but I think that what we do is we continually give people reasons to stay with us once they start using the tool. So activation and retention for us, and we've had people who use You Can Book Me for 10 years, And people do get bored, and people can move off, and they find other solutions, or they just want novelty. So I think with You Can Book Me, one of the things that we've managed to do successfully is continue to be relevant for people. We can't force people to use a booking tool if they haven't got a reason to have scheduling in their lives. But what we can say is, once you're using us and you're settled, we're always going to take care of your back, and we're always going to make sure that the service we provide you is as best as we can, and we're always going to give you as good a customer service as we can. So I've always said about my competitors that, yes, there's obviously huge competitors out there compared to You Can Book Me, but I don't have to worry about all of their customers and what they're up to, what their product is. I just have to take care of You Can Book Me customers, and I have to take care of You Can Book Me customer service, and make sure that that is as good as it can be, and try to make sure that people do get a different type of product and service from us that feels different to other people, which maybe sometimes intangible, but basically it's our moat that is the experience of using our tool and the experience of working with our company, which obviously means nobody would then think to go, actually, I'm going to try the competitors. And that we don't always get that right, but that is basically my strategy.
I love that. And it's so refreshing to hear because, again, going back to the, growth at all costs era, it was about acquisition, and retention would often, and that sticky factor would often, kind of be an afterthought. Not for the CSM, certainly, who were dealing with the fires. But one thing that I heard last week at a conference, I was at Customer Success Week in New York last week, and they talked about in one of the sessions around how PLG is easy come, easy go. And I hope everybody that was at this session hears this podcast, because I think what you talked about is so relevant to that second part of that easy go. You're the opposite of that. It's, okay, we've activated you, we're going to stay relevant. And that's a key word there, is how do you stay relevant to your customers, and how do you keep them, and create that stickiness factor so that they want to use you, because it's easier said than done, but if you have customers that have been with you for 10 years, I think you figured that part out, and that is some phenomenal customer lifetime value there. So,
well, this is it. Yeah, it's people sometimes sniff at PLG style freemium metrics because you need to build up thousands and thousands of customers if they're only ever paying you $10-20 a month. So to get to a multi-million-pound turnover, you do need 10,000 plus customers at least. But if you keep those customers for 10 years and you're not using you're not living the SaaS, the B2B SaaS retention nightmare of 12 months or less retention, you can do it. You can sustain it for a very, very long time. And the other thing I would say is, in terms of the sales process, is that nobody feels motivated about tricking people into 3-year contracts of software that they didn't want to buy. And it just goes all against, nobody has a right to run a subscription recurring revenue business. And all this stuff where, if you didn't cancel within the 60 days of your 12-month renewal, then you have to renew for another 12 months. Like, no, I don't. Nobody goes into a shop and is like, well, if you decided not to buy that dress, if you tried it on, you have to buy it. It's nobody else in any other kind of retail or service industry tries to put customers under pressure to continue to renew for a product or service that they don't want or they don't need. And I think as an industry, the days of those kind of hackery tricks where you're tricking people into renewing and you're tricking people into not churning or whatever else, and it can sometimes often be very expensive contracts. And that's the way to maintain your recurring revenue stream. It's not a proper business. You're not really selling a proper thing if you actually have to trick people into renewing.
Yeah, I agree. And it goes back to what you were saying earlier about do no harm, the CEO of Typeform, how he said do no harm. I think, some of those tactics, I'm just going to call them out and say that they were sleazy. And anybody that's still doing them, they are sleazy. And my motto is be easy to do business with every step of the way. And, because it's just from a human perspective, it's just the right thing to do, I think. And then from a business perspective, you don't earn that like bad word of mouth that can happen when you do those tactics. If because I remember, I won't say what software it was, but I was a day late in canceling for my
Mm.
annual subscription, and they were like, oh, no, you had to let us know yesterday. Wouldn't budge. And so then after that, I was like, anybody who asked me about them or for recommendations, I deterred a number of people from going for that reason to that software. And one of my favorite programs that I've ever run in my career was back when I was leading a CS team, and we ran a bad fit customer program. And what we did was, we, as a leadership team, we identified that we were narrowing our ICP and we were building our product for this particular ICP and no longer developing it for what was once an ICP but no longer. So we thought, okay, how do we navigate this? And make a long story short, what we decided was that we were going to find a partner that we could migrate those customers to. And we gave the customers a choice, and we were very transparent, and we communicated with everybody and said, we're not building for what you need anymore. These feature requests, we're not building for that. So we're not going to kick you off, but if you choose that you want to move to this other platform that has kind of what you needed, and basically the things that we decided not to build, this other platform had, we'll help you migrate. And so we had an agreement with this other company, and we helped companies migrate. Some stayed and were like, no, we're fine with the workarounds. And then others were like, okay, no, we'll actually migrate to this other one. But they were so grateful for the transparency and the honesty. And we actually ended up getting like referrals and references from some of the bad fit. And that was just, such an eye opener for me, and in just how to be easy to do business with and just doing what's right.
Yeah.
So, for whatever that's worth, I think if companies do that and kind of take that, hit up front, it'll, pay itself back in the long run.
I completely agree. I think that at the end of the day, we're all humans as well, Elizabeth. I mean, we're just human beings. I mean, especially in the age of AI, we haven't even, it's amazing that we've had a 25-minute conversation, including the Scottish fiddle scene at Nova Scotia, but we haven't managed to mention AI yet. But that is just going to prove to us the value of business and the value of human interaction means something. Otherwise, it's just going to be the AI bots negotiating for us, negotiating contracts on services. And it's not going to be human beings that are going to be involved. So we've got to look at it philosophically, I think, as well as knowing what the basic principles are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'm pro AI, so I'll preface this comment with that before I say that second part.
Some of your best friends are AI bots, Elizabeth.
I think so. I interact with a lot of AI bots, and some have been great experiences. Like, there was an airline that I was clearly engaging with, and it was very helpful. But once it got to a point where it needed some more complex human reasoning and help, it diverted me to a human, and that human had all of the context and was able to help me out. And it was a great experience. But then you have these other bots that, they're not trained, they don't have the data, various different reasons, and whether it's, AI, customer service, and it's a horrible experience. So I'm all for AI, and I see it as a great co-pilot to humans to make us, that intersection of efficiency and effectiveness. But I think there's a lot of companies that are unfortunately doing, wrong to their customers because they're trying to save a buck or two. And,
we had a slightly unfortunate experience in B2B Rocks in Paris. Not it had anything to do with B2B Rocks, but it was an event that was put on for women in SaaS, sort of a SaaS female kind of event. And my friend Alex, who was an accountant, she applied. We just sort of registered for tickets to go. And she got a rejection like 2 hours before the event was due to start to say, we're very sorry, but this event is targeted at women who are looking through their careers in SaaS. Thanks very much for your interest, but, don't come. And me and Alex were we just couldn't understand it. And we thought, is it because she's an accountant? If she's an accountant, then we're only talking about people who literally work for SaaS companies, even though her specialism as an accountant is SaaS companies. And then I realized, like, oh, Alex, it's because they think you're a man, and they're sending you this polite email to say don't come because they think you're a man. Anyway, it was kind of worse than that. When we went back, and I was really, indignant, and said, well, I'm not coming either. Neither of us are coming. But the reaction was kind of worse than the thing itself, because the reaction was, oh, we're really sorry, our AI just wrongly flagged Alex, so but of course you can come if you like. It's like, no, you can't just now blame the AI as if it's like, oh, a machine did it. It's like you as the human decided to put your RSVP guest list into the responsibility of an AI bot. And, whether it was Alex being a fairly, androgynous name, like you can get lots of female Alexes and male Alexes, and humans know that. But also, what about the world's names? Like, we're not just talking about Western Anglo-Saxon names. We're talking about every name under the sun of every human being. What happens if the AI is making decisions about, based on names, who people are and whether they're in the list or not? And that's come up before. I mean, that actually has come up in Britain, a totally different case about Irish names being excluded from a holiday park. But you start to think, look, come on, guys, that was not the problem. AI is still imperfect, as you said. It still isn't great. It needs to be trained. It needs to know what its instructions are. But human beings choosing to use AI, that is potentially a problem. They thought because AI had made the mistake, it wasn't their problem.
Yeah. And you can't abdicate your responsibility or accountability to
Exactly.
AI.
Exactly.
It doesn't work that way. And,
Yeah.
there's ethics and all of those other elements to it. But I think it goes back to what we were talking about in, that customer experience and how you show up for your customers. And, I'll use this as a segue into another question that I've been dying to ask you, because I'm so fascinated by your journey. And that's how you've, created You Can Book Me, turned it into a profitable, successful bootstrap software company. So you mentioned 5 million ARR and generated over $10 million in EBITDA. I imagine some of what you've learned along the way is, kind of the customer acquisition, as well as having to keep customers and some of that efficiency around acquisition and cost to serve. So I'd love to hear some of the biggest lessons that you've learned, around building this bootstrap company.
Oh, wow. So, yeah,
Big question, I know.
lessons, aka mistakes. A lesson is only a mistake that you basically, have had time to recover from. People is so, I'm kind of jealous of the companies that have an opportunity to build a go-to-market strategy which does actually rely on AI bots and automation, because 12 years ago it was very hard for us to work out a people strategy. And I think that any business needs a people strategy. And it's not saying anything, like, people are the best thing about my business, that we get to work with the people inside You Can Book Me, and we get to work with the customers who use You Can Book Me. It's a very strong people facing business and company, I should say. It's not like, oh, look at your cat or your doggy, your puppy behind you. You've got two puppies there. So yeah, we are a very strong people facing business and company. So by that I mean we deal with people 24 hours a day. People are using the tool 24 hours a day. And our company we're a remote company, but we interact with everybody all the time. So we're not like a deep R&D tech innovation in the lab all day by yourself kind of company. We are about people all the time. And I think that lesson is that you have to know and understand a lot more about people than I actually thought. I thought I knew more about people than I actually did. And it's a continuous learning process to get better at interacting with people, because who you are as a person and how you are with your friends or your family or who you are at home is not the same thing as you as a business leader or as an executive or as a manager or as an individual contributor or as a team member. And that people skills is I think that has to be, it's a little bit, it's like culture fuel. It's fuel for any culture in any company. and you have to nurture it. So you make your decisions about, whether you've got loads of idiots in your company causing problems, or spending too much money, or being incompetent, or being really, high maintenance, or whatever it is, like whatever people problems you might have. It's a conscious decision on the part of the company and the leadership of the company to have that. It doesn't happen by accident. Equally, you can have, an incredible company full of gorgeous people, but you have very different ambitions about what you want to achieve. There are certain types of culture. For example, Amazon executives know that if they go into work at Amazon, they're going in for a 100-hour-a-week, reach for the stars, because Jeff Bezos literally is trying to reach for the stars. And there's no tolerance for, work-life balance, frankly. So it's like, okay, don't go work for Amazon and then try to expect work-life balance. Go to Amazon if you essentially want to spend all your time working, or work for Elon Musk if you want to spend all your time working. I think there's a culture difference between America and North America and Europe about that. And obviously a lot of it has been regulated in a statutory way in Europe. So employers don't get to do the thing that Elon Musk says is mandatory, which is work here 100 hours a week, otherwise you're fired. I mean, he says the most outrageous things when it comes to HR. So HR is a lot more strict in the UK and in Europe. But even so, there's still, every company has its culture. And I would say to any founder, one of my biggest lessons, and we started this lesson, I mean, you can see in the background in my office is this, we have 6 values. I can read them out. Commitment to excellence, curiosity and optimism, find and share the solution, confidence and transparency, simple is beautiful, and tolerance and respect. And those 6 values are values that we set out in 2016, and we are accountable to them. We don't always meet them. Sometimes, I don't know, confidence and transparency might be something where we should have talked about something a lot sooner than we actually did. Or simple is beautiful, and we actually ended up building a very complex piece of engineering that was a bit of a nightmare, and we've had to get rid of it. Or, commitment to excellence. Sometimes you have to lower your standards just to get something done. I mean, so it's not always going to, it's not like a Rubicon of, commandments that we always have to live by, but you have to have some sort of direction, and you have to say to your company, this is basically the direction. This is what we are trying to live by. And these are the people we're hiring who understand that and who are working for it. And then if you do that in a small sense, and we did that when we had less than 10 people, and we're now sort of 20 people plus, going up to 30 people, depending on who you count. So essentially, these people become ambassadors for you for the rest of the company. So your people, culture, organizational fit starts to become a cascade through the initial people that you hire. And that's what happened with us. So it's a big lesson. And, we're always, again, course correcting. And sometimes when we realize that we've gone, the course correction hasn't happened as early as it should have done, people are always, ending up being the effect. You have to talk to your people, work out what they're doing. Sometimes people have to leave. Sometimes you have to hire different people. And it never stops being the number one issue in any company.
And so how does that inform your hiring strategy, I guess, as you scale? Because I think of, when you think of a company that's like you're at 0 and then you hit, 2.5 million, 2.5 to 5 to 10. There's different skill sets that are needed at those stages, and not everyone translates from stage to stage to stage. And that's okay. That's not a knock against anybody. Like, I know the stages that I excel at and that I'm most interested and passionate about. And so I think some of the, as I've grown in my career, I've become self-aware of when it's time to pass on the so-called baton based on different factors. But I guess, how does that inform, who you hire and how you approach hiring and retention of the players?
The first answer is exactly what you've just said. I think an awareness of that is a definite important lesson to remember. So we hired people at the very beginning that were great all-rounders for a scrappy startup that was bootstrapped, where they were just willing to basically do whatever we said. But in terms of specialism, we're not necessarily willing to sort of specialize to one particular discipline. Equally, we've had people where we hired people who would be much better at a later stage company, and they couldn't stand the kind of chaos of of a startup. So as you said, you can't take it personally, because if you spent enough time recruiting, you're always usually going to be talking to decent, intelligent, hardworking people. And so you have to treat those people with respect. And sometimes those mistakes happen where there's a misalignment, or it's a bit like product market fit. You have people company fit. Don't know if that exists. PCF, people company fit.
It does now. It does now.
um,
You coined a new term.
yeah. And so, the conversations I've had with people when people move on is it's the kind of classic, it's not you, it's us. Like, the life and the evolution of You Can Book Me, it outstrips founders, outstrips. So my co-founder is my CTO. He doesn't do any day-to-day operational work anymore inside the engineering team, because he's brilliant at the early stage technical MVP stage. He is not there to do day-to-day engineering management of a team. So we hired people in to basically replace him because he wasn't the right fit. So, and he's a co-founder, he's my husband. Like, so it's not personal at all. It's about saying right person for the right seat. And that's what they talk about in traction in the EOS theory. Gino Wickman, he talks about the right person in the right seat. And you've got seats in your company that need filling, and you've got people, and you need to make sure that you've got the right person for the right seat. And sometimes you might have the right person in the wrong seat, and you have to find different seats for them. And that's happened with us, where we've moved people around and they've absolutely, they were struggling in the role that they were in. We moved them to a different role and they've just flourished. And you think, oh, why on earth didn't we do that before? What an amazing fit. And equally, you've got people where you've got the wrong person, you've got the right seat, but you haven't got the right person in it, and you have to find the right person. So to answer your question, how does it inform our hiring? Because we're a small company, we hire very conservatively. We spend a lot of time on talent sourcing. So in terms of the overall picture of the role and what we're trying to achieve, we tend to work with a talent sourcer who will go and try to find those people on LinkedIn and create a list of people, as you would with a sales kind of process, of leads, where we're approaching people directly. We're not doing it through a recruiter. It's just saying, we've found you. You seem to have the kind of experience we're interested in, that we're looking for. And we're a particular kind of company, and we think you might fit into our company culture, and this is what we're offering, and are you interested? And we do that much more often than we do a kind of the most successful hires we've done have been when we have done a very specific search for talent, which has obviously been more expensive and taken longer than when we've just advertised posts and expected, advertising a post and just expecting the right people to spot your advert when it's like, dating or something. You don't just put in one ad. Like, you have to broaden your network, and you have to go out there and you have to chat to people, and you have to say who we are and what could we offer, and find the right people.
I love that. And I think sometimes it's underestimated how expensive it is to hire incorrectly, or to not put the kind of due diligence and thought behind it. So yeah, I really appreciate those insights, because it's actually not something that I think is talked about enough in the early stages. And if we have time for one more question, do you have time for one more?
Yes,
before
I do.
Okay. I just want to be respectful of your time. But there's something that I read in a article on entrepreneur.com,
Yes.
where you talked about falling in love with the problem, falling
The
in love with the
solution.
problem, yeah, not
Yeah.
not the product. I think that is so wise, and I see that sometimes with organizations I work with, where they get so invested in their product and their bells and whistles and features, and not the problem, and then that skews every decision. So I would love to hear a bit more from you on that, and what mistakes that you've seen that losing the focus on the problem creates.
Well, I first said this a couple of years ago on Twitter, and I have to say that recently, in a podcast about 6 months ago, Dharmesh Shah from HubSpot, I heard him say the same thing. And so in some ways, it's a very intuitive thing to say if you've had this experience, if you know what the problem is. So the phrase falling in love with the problem, not the solution, is definitely from me. But I want to say as well, like, other people think this. This is not my own unique thought. It was just the way I phrased it. And it's because when you build a software company, so the first couple of years, everybody's obsessed with the problem that you're solving, the product that you're building, and the two are completely aligned. And so nobody understands this until you've been in the business for more than 10 years, Because then what you realize is you have customer problems and customer value, which is driven by the problem. And you have your company's problems and product problems, which is driven by your own decisions. So we have refactoring, we have bugs, we have features that we never got around to building, or we only built half of it, or like I said to you before, pricing issues that we never got right, or scalability of our infrastructure, or integrating with a new third-party tool, deciding to change our CRM or our, customer help desk thing. These are kind of internal problems. And the problem is that your whole company can start just getting obsessed with internal issues to do with things that you created those problems in the first place. So it's problem solving and it's solution driven, but it is not related anymore to the customer. And so my point is, with your product, you need to fall in love with the problem that you're trying to solve. In our case, it's finding a time for people to meet, because that is always going to place you alongside the customer experience of your solution. So you stop thinking, but I've always wanted to build that extra functionality to the tool. I've always wanted to redesign that interface. I really wanted to be able to add notifications to that particular part of the product, because that becomes this sort of, hobby. It becomes a hobby of people who are interested in doing engineering, product design, and and operations. And it's not any more focused on customers. So it's a very simple way of trying to describe quite a lot of business problems that we're solving all the time, which is what we said at the beginning, which is, how do you continue to focus on your ICP? How do you continue to listen to your customers and make sure that you're building what they want? How do you stay sort of scalable and efficient in that? And then, and how do you keep your go-to-market strategies relevant over time? And one of the ways is by every day waking up and going, what problem are we solving today? Well, we're solving a find a time for people to meet problem. We're not solving an integrations problem or a refactoring problem. That is our day jobs that basically, we don't even want to talk about, because we just have to do it. We can't suddenly turn that into our jobs. And that, again, in terms of course correction, that's been, sometimes we're amazing. Like, we've had an amazing year at You Can Book Me. We have just been so productive. We've been on message and we've been flying. A few years ago, we might have been completely obsessed with our internal problems that nobody cares about outside. The customers don't care about our internal problems. So it waxes and wanes, your ability to do it, but you only see it when you've been in a software company for a long time, and people who have maybe been with you for a couple of years, they bring to you this kind of like, I really want to change this third-party software solution. And they act like this is their job. And I'm thinking, we changed it in 2013. We changed it in 2017, and now 2024, we're going to change it again. Tell me why, and so I can see that work, which feels like work, isn't really work. Finding a time for people to meet and solving that problem is what we need to be driven by. And that's what I mean by that.
Okay. I love how this came full circle back to the ICP and solving customer problems. And that ties into that, not just the acquisition, but then retention and keeping them, because you're focused on solving that problem. I think one of the things that I see a lot of startups go wrong in is not understanding, again, that ICP, because if you don't really have that focus, then you lose sight of, you can't even sometimes answer the problem that you're solving if you don't understand, the ICP. So yeah, I think that's brilliant advice. And I would, put that on a plaque on my wall if I was starting a startup.
You have to make sure that it's my name. You have to make sure that it's my name, not Dharmesh Shah's.
Oh, of course. I will put that in the inscription on the bottom. The quote. So is there anything else that, we haven't touched on, whether it's mistakes or things that, you've seen work really well that you'd add that we haven't touched on? Or I know we've covered a big breadth of topics, but.
So the theme of the podcast is tips and trips in go-to-market strategies, and, how can you avoid common pitfalls? So I think that you can spend too much time scrolling on LinkedIn and going to webinars and worrying about, business books. But I don't think that there's no advice out there that would disagree with small experiments, small tests, small risks, small ways of changing what you're doing to test the water on any strategy that you're interested in, as long as there's a fairly low risk of reversal. So I think that the thing that I have learned in the last 10 years is that my mistakes are very common to everybody else's mistakes, or anybody else's pressures are very common to my pressures. So we're not unique. We're not, we're not special, basically, would be my advice. We're not special. And there are going to be people out there that have experienced the same problems or haven't done the same thing. And I think as a community, we should be better at just saying, I don't know how to do this. How can I do this? Or how can I start? Or what could I do better? And we need to reduce the amount of BS in our generalized, professional development world of social media and communities, and instead learn more and spend more time trying and risking and succeeding. Because I think that my success at business and at running You Can Book Me has been the result of me making a net positive of good decisions rather than bad decisions. So I make a lot of bad decisions. I just happen to make a lot more good decisions than I do bad decisions. And I think that's where I would say, for anybody running any kind of job, you don't have to be the founder of a software company, but like whatever job you're doing, you have to understand, how are you going to make this better? How are you going to improve what it is that you do? And how are you going to do that? What are you going to bring to the table to improve this? And if you do that and you keep doing it and you're consistent over time, you will be successful.
I love that. It's test, iterate, learn.
Yes.
And if you do make a mistake, the only shame in it is if you don't learn from it.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why we kind of made this, poor decisions of go to market. It's like, okay, everybody makes mistakes. It's fine, but we'll learn from them. I mean, the name of my company is What Not to Do.
I love it.
So it's, things, because it is a lot of half the battle is knowing what not to do. And yeah, I very much believe in the test. I think it's great advice for the low risk, iterate, and then learn from there. So appreciate that. So thank you so much for your time. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I very much look forward to having a separate conversation on Nova Scotia and
Lovely.
fiddling
Love it.
and Celtic arts.
Love it.
Yes, thank you so much again for joining us.
Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed it.